and welcome to the Islandstadt Sports Show. I'm your host, Earl Basin, and joining me is co-host Jason Ford. We are also joined by the Minister of Sports, Minister Peets, Dr. Peets, as well as the Director of Youth and Sport, Mr. Norbert Simons. First of all, good evening, everyone, and welcome on this Wednesday, March 3rd. We have quite a bit to discuss with this return to sports policy, where we are following government's latest release and where sports stands. So first of all, we'll start with you, Minister. Today's release, obviously, we've gotten 5 more testing positive, not the direction that we would have all wanted to go in, but realistically, how are these numbers affecting the policy to return to sport?
To be quite honest, the numbers out there are dominating the conversation. So we're constantly doing our surveillance as relates to testing, but also surveillance as relates to the prevalence of COVID, particularly as it relates to potential outbreaks. So the COVID situation is a situation that we're trying to manage the best way we can. We can only do that with public support. And having said that, we all have to play our part. So that's the major hurdle as it relates to the stages to return to play. Each of the stages, as we've indicated in our document, one of the conditions in each stage is, it depends on what's happening nationally regarding COVID. So we were trending in the right direction for a number of weeks. And then, of course, we get a bit of a spike. But we have some bright people and some really, really passionate people, not only trying to keep us safe, but also trying to figure out a way how we can get sports up and running.
Yeah, we had that number of 25 congregating, which kind of makes it difficult, even for non-contact sports at times. That number has stood for quite some time. Some sports have returned utilizing the availability of their sport and that number, where others just can't even begin to think to put an event on, let alone have competition. Have we tried to negotiate that 25 number in a bid to allow some, even the non-contact sports, to return? Because we have some that have returned, but majority have not because of that limited number of 25.
Well, of course, there are some national guardrails, so those guardrails, of course, are communicated in the health minister's briefing as well as the premier's briefing. For us, regarding the national sporting bodies, individual sports and clubs, we have to operate within those guardrails. When we need an exemption, we have to go through the necessary application process for exemption. And football, of course, is no different. We certainly need 11 players on the field. We also need a bench. We also need the support staff and the coaches that come along with said team. We also need the match officials and all the people on the grounds that keep the bubble intact. That, of course, requires something more than 25, way more than 25. So there is conversation going on all the time. I don't have the specific information in front of me, but I did see a message today from the subcommittee. There appears to be a plan afoot that we will be able to announce publicly real soon. It sounds like, at least from the information that I've gotten, that there is some light at the end of the tunnel, and perhaps we will see some football in the next week or two.
Mr. Simons, your office has been facilitating the kind of the go-between the health department and the sporting bodies. How has that relationship been over the course of this past just under a year, because it's been since March last year or April last year that we kind of shut down everything, and some sports returned and now back locked down kind of thing. So how has that relationship built over the year?
Well, Good evening again, Pamela and Earl. We've had a pretty good working relationship with the various national sports governing bodies to the point where that we can say that three sports that's considered to be contact sports are now being moved into phase 4. As you know, that the department has been assisting health with getting our athletes, our sports persons in national sports, in all our sports actually, to be COVID tested so that play can resume.
Mm-hmm. Jay?
Good evening, guys.
Hey, hi.
I don't know where to even start with this because it seems like the goalposts keep changing on us. But let's look at some of our national commitments that we got coming up, or potentially coming up, especially with our national football team, Carifta. Obviously, we see a sailing commitment coming up in the next month.
Mm-hmm.
With these numbers spiking as they are, how is the government staying committed to these commitments when, in actual fact, we might be rising and at a number that we obviously don't want in the next week or two?
Yeah, that is certainly difficult. First of all, let me thank Director Norbert and his entire team. They have worked tirelessly over these last couple of weeks and months, particularly over the last couple of weeks. Their efforts have not gone unnoticed. They're certainly dedicated and passionate about what they do. We certainly won't be able to be at this particular situation announcing that some of these sports are in stage 4 if it wasn't for their help. So I certainly hope that they're listening. I know from the ministry point of view and cabinet, we're certainly grateful for their efforts. Jason, you're absolutely right. But one thing I can say to your listenership is that by and large, our athletes are model citizens. You know, they're doing what they need to do so that they can get out there and do the thing that they love regarding their sport. They're certainly going to need the help of the public regarding compliance to the public health regulations to certainly mitigate the likelihood that, you know, we have an outbreak. Because if there is an outbreak that the subcommittee and the health department feel that they can't manage and manage safely, you know, the people who are going to really suffer the most are all of our athletes who have waited patiently, worked hard to keep themselves fit, have complied with all the rules, have moved through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, now in stage 4. I would hate, you know, for the public to, you know, be reckless regarding any COVID requirements, create a spike, and, you know, we have to tell sport that they can't go to stage 4 and that we have to cancel season. You know, that's something we certainly want to avoid. So right now, I just want to encourage everyone. Sport has been responded well. I think the last number I saw earlier this week, Director Norbert, at least as of Monday, about 66% of our footballers, for example, have completed and screened, with more to get done on tomorrow. That is a substantial number, given the number of people who are currently registered. So I think that really bodes well for the conversation that our athletes are dedicated, they're committed, they're doing everything they need to do. I would hate for something like a spike really take away their opportunity to finish out the season, particularly for football.
I'm glad you asked that or mentioned that. What percentage of athletes per sport are you looking for in order for that sport to be able to return to play?
Well, of course, we would love to get 100%. That may be a little unrealistic. Some sports, because you know, some sports have smaller numbers in their particular discipline, and we were able to get 100%, 95% with a few stragglers here and there. When it comes to football, there are no numbers on the island that can compare with football as relates to the number of participants. So having something north of 66% on Monday We'll have better numbers when we get to Friday. But when this whole thing started, if I'm being honest, we were certainly looking at somewhere around 75%, and it looks like we're going to be able to get that.
Jay, back to you.
I hate to be the pessimistic one here, but this initiative of getting tested, the saliva test prior to returning to sport, did this initiative come from another jurisdiction? Was there any data behind making this decision about the success of this initiative in another jurisdiction, or are we, I want to say, the test for this initiative?
Well, I think there's lots of ways we can take a look at that. First of all, the COVID committee for the government has sort of set the agenda nationally. So they're really, really aggressive and assertive about testing. We think that's the first line of defense. If we are aggressive with testing, we can certainly spot COVID quicker. We can notice trends sooner. So that's really been the driving force for us nationally as it relates to the whole country. I am aware, for example, I know in the EPL, for example, which I watch every week, it's not uncommon for the EPL to regularly test other teams in their FA. And I would imagine if we, sort of Google the FIFA guidelines, I'm pretty sure regular testing is a part of that regime as well. But, Bermuda's trying to be a leader, and we're not just trying to protect our sports, but, our economy is so delicate, and we're in such a fragile situation regarding our economy. If we don't manage COVID very well, not only would it be damaging as relates to sports, but, we're not going to be able to open up the country for business. We're not going to see the economic recovery. And, eventually, this stimulus package, which we're trying to work on, won't work because, we're still addressing all of the issues related to COVID.
Yeah, Mr. Simons, from your organization standpoint, ensuring that the governing bodies are adhering to the rules put in place by the health department, how often are you guys in touch with the sporting bodies to ensure that they are encouraging their athletes to fulfill the requirements of having the saliva test in order to get back into some sort of normalcy of competing?
Well, we have one of our officers who is in constant contact with the National Sports Governing Body, sending them out the health regulations, guidelines, encouraging testing. And in fact, when it came down to the testing, not only did our our sports section assist, but many of our staff in other sections of the department have been readily available to assist with testing. Now, for instance, tomorrow night, to come in compliance. They've been constantly sending out emails, constantly reaching out to the national sports governing bodies to get them to, or provide them with the information necessary to make the decision.
Yeah. Minister, ensuring that communication that comes from the health department through cabinet down to youth and sport and then out to the governing bodies, how are we ensuring that message is the same all the way through? Because as we know, messages can change from time to time, from person to person, and then at the finish line, it's a totally different message, or it's not delivered in the manner in which it was initiated for, and then we have a whole bunch of confusion. So how are we making sure that the messages from the health department through cabinet, through the ministry, through to the national sport governing body is the same from when it starts to when it arrives?
Yeah, you certainly bring up a very, very important point. And, I quickly learned in the first couple of weeks when we were starting to push this plan regarding the stages to return back to play, on how important the pipeline of information and communication is. What I quickly learned was, there might be a really, really open and quick dialogue between myself and cabinet. Obviously, I sit in cabinet. Of course, there's an easy conduit of information between myself and Director Norbert Simons, his team, Jacon Etnes, and Macy O'Dill. Now, when we get from the department down to the NSGBs, and then from the NSGBs to the individual clubs, and from the individual clubs down to the individual members, you can imagine, how information sometimes is not readily speedily, or sometimes is not accurate, or is missing some information. So, fortunately, Bermuda's quite small. We have significant ties to the community. I'm connected to various clubs. Norbert has a team of individuals who are definitely involved on the club level. So we're able to keep our ears on the ground. And what we noticed was, sometimes when we communicate something from the ministry or the cabinet level, it doesn't necessarily get to the parent at one particular club, at one particular sport, because sometimes there's a breakdown in communication. Not all clubs and organizations have the same infrastructure. So we're doing the best job we can to make the information public. One of the things that came up last week, when we were getting a little closer to stage 4, I said, hey, listen, you know what? Communication is important. Can someone get a hold of Earl Bazin and Island Stats? So I can have an opportunity to talk to him, his co-host, as well as his listening audience, so that, we can get a direct message out there to the people who are listening. So we certainly want to do all that we can to communicate. If anyone has any questions, we've provided that information in the stages of play. There is one name, one phone number, one email that they can use to contact someone at the Department of Sport, keeping it nice and simple and concise, so that all the information is consolidated in one area, and there's one person communicating that information out.
Well, we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to have more on return to sport policy with the Minister and the Director of Youth and Sport. We'll be right back.
The everyday use of spices goes back well over 6,000 years, evidenced by archaeological finds in Europe, including remains of spiced food. Since 1976, the Frontier Natural Foods Co-op has been bringing a wide range of exciting flavors to the table. The results are good news for the environment and more robust, fragrant essential oils in these natural seasonings. We're featuring Frontier Natural Products, organic ground cloves, rub sage leaf, and poultry seasoning. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
Minister Jason alluded to the fact that we'll be hosting some international events in the very short near future, starting at the end of the month with Bermuda taking on Aruba at the National Sports Center in football. And then at the end of April, we're due to host the Sail GP event. And then down in July, beginning of July, we're due to host the Carifta Games. In between that, we have all sorts of championships that would have or would be taking place if we return to sport. But looking at it from not just the athlete standpoint, but from a spectator standpoint as well, how soon will we start hearing information regarding spectators at these events, and what stipulations they will have to be required to do in order to be able to be allowed to even attend?
Well, I guess I'll, Director Norm, I guess I'll take responsibility for that one. The short answer is, one, we want to safeguard the opportunity to return back to play. Having said that, I'll be willing to support anything to keep our athletes on track to get back on the field, get back on the track, get back to whatever sport that they're doing without fans. I'm willing to certainly consider that, particularly given the fact that we can't control everything as relates to COVID. But to get to your point about when fans can get back to the watching those sports live, we're still a little ways off from that. And so right now, the focus is on preserving the opportunity to actually have the individual sports get back out there and doing the things that they love. Right now, we certainly don't have the evidence to support an application to the COVID subcommittee to get fans in play. That is largely due, particularly to everyone who's listening. We'll have a better indication when fans can return and enjoy watching sports live when the public gathering number increases. Right now, of course, we've got a curfew that's being reintroduced. That's an indication that, we may be going in the wrong direction. And a way of protecting our forward progress is to go back to our curfew. But when the curfew is lifted and we're moving forward again, hopefully the large number exemption gets a little larger. And as that number gets larger, depending on the venue, now we're talking about, another conversation about fans coming back to watch their favorite sport.
Mhm. Jay, you have another question?
Yeah. Frustration, obviously, for locals, fans, obviously, you guys.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised you didn't mention cup match. It's not too early.
I'm getting there. See, really good. I'm trying to ease you into this, Minister. But before I get into cup match, quarantine. So, is there any exemptions for the foreign athletes who are arriving on our island? Because as we know, COVID doesn't discriminate. Whether it's locals returning, residents returning back to the island, whether it's ministers returning back to the island, or whether it's foreign athletes coming to the island. Is there any exemptions for these foreign athletes coming in compared to residents coming in on a daily basis? Because obviously with the frustrations that's brewing around in our community, especially now being reintroduced to curfew, obviously some going to feel that it's unfair. But I would just want to know if there's any exemptions, because we're going to have athletes coming from around the world. And obviously now with all these different strains, it's causing a bit of angst. So I'm just wondering if there's any exemptions for the foreign athletes coming in.
Well, of course, when you're doing a large event and you got foreign athletes, elite athletes coming in, I can tell you there's a mammoth amount of negotiations that's going on. So the word about exemptions is a little difficult to sort of explain, simply because, depending on the event, the type of event, the length of the event, how many people, those exemptions, can vary. And depending on who's organizing it, there is different types of requests that come in. But what's really, really important, as relates to the health officials, the sub committee on COVID, is really protecting the event, the athletes, and of course the larger community. So a lot of that really depends on the ability of said event to maintain a very, very strict bubble. And that's a starting point. If we're unable to come up with a scenario that maintains a very robust bubble, then there's no other conversation about exemptions. There are also things that are necessary regarding the international governing bodies as it relates to adhering to certain guidelines. We're not really in control of what happens in other countries as it relates to what they're doing and not doing. We certainly have to be really, really clear about what we're trying to do. And so I can tell you, from the cabinet through the ministry, we certainly want to see these sporting events come for lots of reasons. Our athletes need to be out there competing. The viewing public wants some positivity as it relates to movement in that direction. It does do something for the psychological well-being of all of us when we see the return of sport. Of course, there's also the economic impact in the event that we're putting on an international event. There are people coming in, spending money in our restaurants and our hotels and whatnot, and that's also important. But when it comes to exemptions, yes, that conversation goes on all the time. There are not lots of negotiations that go on, but a large portion of that is predicated on the ability of the event to really maintain a bubble.
Just to piggyback on that, we're going to be hosting the SailGP, and these athletes are due to arrive and be amongst us for a number of weeks even before the competition. Currently, I know there are 3 teams in New Zealand who just went on lockdown. How do we plan to be able to make sure that these folks that are coming in from these teams, who none of them have a Bermuda link, but they'll be living amongst us from these places, how are we able to ensure that, one, the general public is safe from them and they are safe from the general public?
Now, I haven't seen that particular proposal as it relates to the details, regarding, how that bubbling works. But I can tell you that there are some generic features that are very, very robust. It has to be a strict bubble. Everything is negotiated right down to quarantine, to regular testing. What happens if someone tests positive? What are the protocols? And they're going to manage that particular instance. So all of those things are thoroughly discussed and approved in advance, long before anyone arrives on the island. That particular event, of course, is not necessarily coming through the ministry or the Department of Sport. That particular event, of course, we endorse it. We're always in favor of seeing some sport happening. That one came through the the Bermuda Tourism Authority. So I don't particularly have oversight or any in-depth information on exactly what that particular COVID plan looks like.
Okay. I always go back to that same question, but why? If you have a director of sport and you are the minister of sport, the sports department under the Bermuda Tourism Authority should come under your remit so that we don't have this problem of them doing stuff outside of what our athletes are allowed to do, following guidelines, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're working on it. I'm a bit of a newbie. There are some other people who are a little bit more senior than I am, have seen this issue multiple different ways. The PS is aware of it as well. We're certainly working on it. So Rome wasn't built in a day. But yeah, we're on the same page.
Okay.
We're on the same page.
We're going to take another commercial break, and when we come back, we'll have more with the Minister and Director of Sports. We'll be right back.
Amy's Kitchen is an independent organic food producer, a family business who've been focusing on wholesome and flavorful foods for over 30 years. From their first pot pie right up to 1 million meals a day, and firmly believe in the importance of TLC throughout the entire journey to the final outcome. This month we're featuring Amy's Organic Soups, Black Bean Vegetable Minestrone, Quinoa Kale Red Lentil, Low Fat Split Pea, and Vegetable Barley and more. All of them dairy, gluten, and lactose free. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
Welcome back. Jay?
Okay, Minister, since you want to talk about it, top match.
Okay. A little something in my mouth.
Biting his tongue. You saw him standing outside the Victorious Club for this year the other day, right?
No, I didn't. No,
You didn't see the picture?
No.
Okay, well, good. Ask your question.
Obviously, with the Cup match, obviously our premier event on our island, historically, financially, and also culturally, it takes a good bit of planning, obviously, months and months and months ahead of time. With this goalpost keep moving, what is your latest information or update regarding Cup match that you can give us or preview to give us?
Okay, I can go on record with some information about Cup match.
Okay, I'm sorry. Good. Picture distracted me just now.
That graphic is actually not it's not connected with Cup match, but yes, that's at St. George's Cricket Club. my second home.
There you go.
We had a COVID testing site down there for football.
Yes. I just told him. I just said you were standing outside the Victoria's Club for this year, so I just wanted to show him the graphic and the picture. So.
Okay. Well, of course, most people might be aware that the two clubs. There is a second club, which I won't mention their name. Had a conversation with George's Cricket Club, and they mutually came to a decision for the cup to be played out at St. George's Cricket Club this year for cup match. That's a conversation, of course, between the two clubs, because you guys will recall that cup match didn't occur last year. So the two clubs had to sort of, have a conversation about whether or not this year the cup match goes on, or whether or not Somerset will have an opportunity to host the cup. But ultimately, it was decided St. George's. So the executive planning team have already contacted the ministry. They're in active discussions right now and putting together a plan to host cup match this year. So that's where we are right now. I certainly support it. At this junction, I don't think there's going to be fans involved, but that's based on the situation that we're facing today, as relates to what COVID looks like today. But if we're in a better position come summertime, who knows what might be possible.
Would you say that because the numbers that we looked at over the weekend and so forth, wouldn't those numbers contribute from sporting bodies being tested? Because we saw over 1,400 over the weekend. We saw the numbers rise in testing. Would they be contributed to football, to sport, or has sports been taken and given its own testing number?
So they are keeping track of sport testing numbers separately. Of course, this particular test that sport has been engaged in stage 3 is the saliva test, as opposed to the nasal test that some of us are familiar with. So the health department and those individuals who are responsible for record keeping are able to track the individual sport by registration, as well as sport in general. But the overall numbers of surveillance testing, of course, gets fed up into the larger number for the entire country. So we're doing really, really well as a country regarding the prevalence of testing. And sport, of course, in this last week or so, has certainly given the government and a country a real big uptick in testing, because we had so many of our sporting athletes come on board with us, and I thank them so much for their initial testing. We're working on putting together a plan for their retest in 30 days.
Mr. Simons, from your staff standpoint, you were talking about the fact that your staff have been readily available to assist in any way, shape, or form. But initially, what concerns would they have had in assisting? Because obviously, when you start talking about medical, everybody's going to put their hand up and say, I don't know anything about it. So how am I going to be safe? And so what initial concerns did your staff have once this process started?
Well, again, I think that the initial concerns were, as you stated, we're not medical professionals, but what our responsibility was more of an administrative one. For instance, we'd collect the saliva test kits, work with the National Sports Governing Body to set up times to be tested. And then when they show up, we'll distribute the test to them. They will do the saliva test, be collected back and give it back to health for analysis. That's what our primary role has been, is to ensure that we get the
Okay. I think we lost him for a minute. Jay, have a question for the minister?
I'm Minister. I don't want to speak for you, but
members, so they're at their distribute them, give it to them, and then collect. Looks like I'm going off.
Yeah, you're in and out. You're here. You're back. You're back. You there?
Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. I just wondering. Okay.
Okay.
So maybe it was that picture of St. George's being put up. You know,
So your phone starts acting up because I see this big grin on Jason's face, nodding his head. Yes.
Yes. You know,
Not to worry.
the internet is partial. You know, to Somerset. So you know, when you start talking like the St. George's random about what club is the championship club.
Be in the minister's office at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. You get your ribbon.
But anyway, we've been doing that ministry. There were some concerns, and but I have to say that we have a team of people in our office who put their hands up to assist, to ensure that the whole testing regime can be successful. And I might add that they're not all from the sports section. They came from our community centers, some of our after-school people, staff. We're there to assist with the administration of those. So I think that it's been a concerted team effort to ensure that those that wanted to be tested in sport will be tested.
Okay.
Before I give you another hard question, Minister, let's give you an easy one. We mentioned cup match. What about May 24th? And even the Edward Cross race. Obviously, there's some cultural events, non-contact, but obviously gathering of people. Any plans for them to return this year?
What was the second event?
The Edward Cross sailboat race. Comet race.
You know what? I'm Director. I'm not even familiar with that one. So I'm not really sure. I don't know if I have all the particular details. I do have a lot of things going on in my head at the moment, but far as I can tell, at least based on information I think I've had sight of, the May 24th event is still planned. Sorry, the Bermuda Day race is still planned. It's not always on May 24th anymore. I keep forgetting that.
Yes.
So that event, I would imagine, is still live. Is that correct, Director?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's the information that I have. Of course, we're certainly not promoting large gatherings at this moment, and so I certainly would have to get some feedback from the COVID committee. You know, I've watched the Bermuda Day race my whole life. Other people may go to the beach or perhaps sleep in, but I would typically grab a lawn chair and head down to Crow Lane. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen this year. I certainly haven't made a public announcement about it, but if the race does go on, you know, are we going to put some public guidelines in place, you know, to certainly keep the viewing public safe, as well as practicing some social distancing as they come out to watch the race.
That actually would offer a big challenge because it's along the roadside. I know. They did announce that they were having a total of 500 competitors for the Bermuda Day Half Marathon Derby. For the Edward Cross long distance race, which is the Comet sailboat race from West End, this year from West End to the East End, there's going to be a different component to it because the International Comet Series is due to take place in Bermuda as it was last year, but got canceled. So that's going to have overseas competitors as well, increase the numbers. But I guess they would have to follow the same guidelines as the Sail GP would have to follow when it comes to that. But these conversations would have to be held because as opposed to a football match or cup match, you can control who comes in, but the Bermuda Day Half Marathon, Front Street, lining up at the causeway, all that type of stuff comes into play. And how do you stop the public from gathering? I mean, on the day, what do you bring out? The army? Not enough.
Yeah.
You know, because we have these traditions, we have these heritage things that we're so used to doing. It's just a normal thing, and the fact that it was missed a year ago, people want to rekindle that feeling, that sense of there is some normalcy going on, and obviously it's going to be one of those things that the government, in consultation with the health department, and obviously the authorities as well, on how this event, especially the Bermuda Day Half Marathon, will actually play out.
Right. I certainly hear you, and those are questions and concerns that would have to meet some stringent guidelines and approvals in the application process. As these events get a little closer. We're already in March. So I'd imagine some type of ministerial statement will probably come out real soon. At least advising the public of what's happening. But it's a little premature for me because I actually don't have a full answer regarding that, outside of the fact that right now the race, as far as I know it, is still green light.
And another question regarding the stringent rules and regulations put in place on sport is always coming down to finances as well, because you need to have more staff to ensure that they operate in a safe environment, to police the number of people that can come through the gate, if any, or if they can, then you're going to need to increase the security around the grounds and so forth. I know you haven't given your budget statement regarding the 2021-2022 budget, but how is this affecting those things on the financial side of sport?
It's always difficult. Man, I wish I would have been the minister of sport in a non-COVID year when the economy is booming. It's certainly no fun. And when I sit around the cabinet table, all the ministries, are suffering, and unfortunately we have to make cuts. Cuts have been made, and then sometimes further cuts are required. As it relates to our particular ministry, after the first round of measures, it's my understanding that there weren't any further cuts to the ministry. But having said that, it's certainly smaller than it was the year before. But the need, out there is probably greater this year than last year. So it certainly doesn't make it easy on persons like our director, Norbert, as it relates to, trying to find a way to not only run the department, but also to try to keep funding going out to the various sporting bodies. So it's certainly a very difficult task. But we're certainly going to do our best. We certainly have to just play the hand that has been dealt us.
All right. We're going to take our final commercial break, and when we come back, we'll wrap it up with the Minister and the Director of Sport. We'll be back.
This month, we're featuring a range of infant and baby care products from Hello Bello, a company started up by a husband and wife team who were inspired to meet the challenges arising from the often surprising, not to mention messy experiences that came with the territory known as parenting. The couple behind Hello Bello know that being a parent is uniquely demanding, and their mission is to bring you premium products at gentle prices. Try Hello Bello Alpha diapers in a range of sizes, Alpha Blossom baby lotion, baby powder, and much more. Lindo's, why go anyplace else?
Jay?
Well, Minister, I think I'll let you off the hook today because, you are on a losing side. So all around, your day-to-day.
No, St. George is going to win this cup this year.
Thank you very kindly, Minister. No need to say anything else regarding that.
Your best chance.
But,
Well,
here's this, Arrow Basin. There may not be anybody there to enjoy it.
Right. Hey, so regardless of what happens, we win.
Nobody here is nobody. It's just
But we certainly have a lot of work to do. Just a little recap on the budget situation. One of the first things that I learned at my first meeting in meeting the NSGBs was really about funding. And expecting government to do everything is probably unrealistic, and maybe potentially in some cases maybe a little inappropriate. But we do understand the government does have a responsibility to support and promote sport. There's this conversation that came up in the NSGBs that I had never heard before, because I'm new to all of this, and that was around a sports lottery. So I've been thinking about that, and I don't have any answers at the moment to share with you guys or with your listening audience. But the pandemic is forcing everyone to sort of rethink, on how we can do things differently. So potentially, I don't know what the answer is, but potentially, some type of public-private partnership, can be probably considered, to bring some additional funding to our sporting bodies, and the public-private partnerships can perhaps also bring additional resources and expertise. So at the moment, I'm just really open to all ideas. Because I certainly want our sporting infrastructure to be, properly funded, so that we have lights at our fields, not only for training, but also for night games, and that our facilities are well kept up, and, and that clubs are not struggling, to keep the grass cut and all those other types of things. So, these are things that I think about all the time. I don't have all the answers, but I certainly have a reasonable understanding of some of the things that we can do.
Jay, you had that question though?
Well, I'm glad you actually brought up sports lottery, because we've been talking about it for years, and it's something that you mentioned earlier. Just in your last statement, you were just saying about government is ideal to help finance to promote sport, but you need clubs for the atmosphere for the sport to happen. And
Right.
at times when the clubs are closed or curfew, and these clubs are more than struggling. So it's gonna be hard to even put on a program to even compete to do anything without the actual finance and the actual help. So I'm just thinking, even if something like Cup Match, obviously these clubs depend on, rather St. George's or Somerset, depend on a good bit of their revenue the people coming through the gate. Has there been any talks of helping out the clubs financially to offset some of that cost? Because if obviously we're not going to have 10,000 people coming in a venue during Cup Match this year. I'm pretty sure that's out the window.
Well, I know St. George Cricket Club did get a put in a grant request, which was approved. They got some monies the other day. I can't remember what week it was, but it was sometime this year. That's probably a small dent, in a leaky bucket. The other thing that I'm concerned about, particularly as it relates to proper funding and having revenue streams. I don't think any of our clubs, want the bar at the club, to be the only thing that's, keeping the club open and keeping, the club solvent, because, our sporting clubs are more than just a bar. And, so I'm certainly open to some ideas, of course, as I mentioned, sports lottery was something that was sort of new to me as a term. I hadn't heard about that before joining the ministry. We'll got casinos coming online perhaps this year. It'll be interesting to see, whether or not, there is an appetite to really take a look at that.
Yeah. Well, I do want to ask the director, as far as the ministry is concerned, what will be your role and responsibility once the sports return, no matter what sport it is, once they return, to ensure, or who will be the monitors to make sure that those who have not been tested don't participate?
That's a good question, Earl. Right now, our role is to assist with getting people tested. We're keeping a list of those that have been tested, and we will continue to courage. Now, what we're doing is that we're liaising with the National Sports Governing Body per se, so that they're involved in the whole process. For instance, I can say, because we're talking about football at the moment, I can say that football, like as the ministers indicated earlier, are at 66%, and with 5 more teams to be tested tomorrow. So again, and when it comes down to the final decision about what sport and whether sport can continue to play, is in consultation with the health department, because as you're aware, that they ultimately make the decision about what goes on and what does not go on as far as this COVID pandemic is concerned. So what we'll do as best as possible is to assist our sports governing bodies and their clubs to try to be as compliant as much as possible. I know it's going to be a difficult task, but we're up for it.
Mm. And Minister, will sanctions be administered by government if national sports governing bodies or their members take part in a sporting event, regardless of what sport it is, that hasn't been tested? How is that? Because obviously that part has to be discussed before you actually allow that return to sport. What's the ramifications if someone does?
Yeah, so yes, I mean these are really, really important questions. When imagining questions that athletes are having as well as clubs. Director is correct. Right now, the ministry, particularly the Department of Sport, is certainly working their tail off to help the clubs get their testing in so that they can move safely to stage 4. There is some honor system and some trust and some responsibilities that are placed on the clubs. The clubs have agreed that if a person has not engaged in their stage 3 testing, they're unable to move to stage 4. The rest of us who have been tested will move to stage 4. What does that mean? That means if I'm the starting right back and we've got a game on Saturday, but I haven't tested, and I am not going to be on the starting roster. That's not something the minister is going to have to oversee directly, nor would I expect that to be overseen directly by Norbert's team. That's something that the clubs are going to have to manage. They have already demonstrated the ability to, police these things and be disciplined about it. You guys will remember back in December when football was still happening. For example, the clubs were able to create their bubble. They had people out there at the outside of the bubble doing the screenings, checking the team sheets, doing the temperature checks, doing the COVID questions. And if you didn't pass muster at the gate, then you were not allowed into the bubble to play. Those things still exist. And the clubs have already demonstrated they're compliant with that and their willingness to do that. The only thing that's really been added right now to that particular scenario is one more question. And that is, have you been tested in stage 3? And of course, all the clubs are able to determine that because they're the ones that send in their list. So anyone that's not on that list just wouldn't get into the field of play until said person can go get a test and then come back next week and join them.
So I'm clear in hearing this, that the players, no matter what sport it is, will still be required to have the temperature checked, have the questions asked on game day, as well as the saliva test every 28 to 30 days.
Yes, correct. So the same things that we saw in December, for example, just before we went into the lockdown, those protocols remain in play. So we'll still have the bubbles. We'll still have the COVID checks out front. Those things are staple. So even though we're making progress with the virus, we're still, doing social distancing. We're still wearing masks. So all of those normal things that we've been doing that's been working still remain in play. The COVID testing, as it relates to saliva testing, doesn't erase the bubble. It doesn't erase, doing the screenings and the temperature checks. The screening for saliva COVID testing is really just an additional measure put on top of what we're already doing regarding our COVID management.
And my final question to that would be, anyone that's had the injection, the second dose, are they still required to do the 28 to 30-day test, saliva test?
Yes. The short answer is yes to that. And sometimes that may be a bit surprising to individuals. Why would you be giving a saliva or a COVID test to someone who's been vaccinated? The short answer is this, vaccination, of which we certainly encourage, it doesn't prevent someone from hosting the virus or spreading the virus. What the vaccine does is it assists the internal protections of the individual from becoming symptomatic and getting sick. But not getting sick doesn't mean that, you can pass the germs. So if you think of the flu, for example, you can get the flu shot, maybe not catch the flu this year, but, still sneeze or touch something and pass on the flu virus to someone else, even though you never got sick. So the testing at the moment will still remain in play.
Okay. Final question, Jay?
No, Minister, I just want to thank you, and always feel free to come back and update us on, obviously, our major sports that are coming up. Obviously, you want to get more information out. I have a few more COVID questions, but obviously, I'd rather have the Minister of Health here and National Security, because obviously it's out of your remit of some of those things, and I don't want to put you under pressure since you are St. George's guy,
Absolutely. Around the cabinet table, I don't know if I'm in the minority. I actually think I am. But having said that, I have a lot of friends who are Somerset fans, and I love them dearly. And I did see, what's his name, Charlie Marshall the other day. And based on his recollection, the head-to-head match between the two clubs, it's narrow, but St. George's has more wins.
You're behind in that too, I tell you.
Am I? So maybe his information is incorrect. I'm not a historian, so he was of the opinion that
we're behind, just barely. We're behind. But,
Okay.
but bear in mind, there's only two teams, so somebody's got to have a turn for a little while, and then the other team has a turn for a little while. Our turn comes end of July.
Right. I asked Charlie Marshall, would he be willing at his age to come out as a colt? He laughed too.
You're depriving him of what he likes to do best over 2 days now.
No, I think he said, he won't be a colt, he'll be an old goat.
Well, gentlemen, I do want to thank you very much for your time and sharing the latest updated information regarding return to play for our athletes, contact and non-contact sports. I know everybody will be anxiously waiting to hear from their national sport governing body at what stage they can actually move in once all the saliva tests have been done and where we go from there. So we'll keep a check on what the health department through the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Recreation is able to put out on a daily or weekly basis, and we can get some sports up and running very, very soon.
Thank you. If you guys are not home yet, please be careful when you're traveling this evening, especially Director Norbert. Please be careful. The weather out there right now is really making up. It's not very pleasant.
Yeah. Well, folks, enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.